Saint Damien of Molokai, Apostle of the Lepers. Joseph de Veuster was born on January 3, 1840 in Tremelo, Belgium. As a child, he amused himself by making little houses like those of the missionaries in the jungles. He had an inner desire to go one day to distant lands to be a missionary. When he was 8 years old, he decided to go with his little sister to live as a hermit in a lonely forest and dedicate himself to prayer. His family was very frightened, but fortunately, some peasants found them there and brought them back home. When he was a young man, one day while walking down the street, he was hit by a car, and miraculously, he got up without any injuries. He also had to work very hard in the fields to help his parents. This gave him great strength, and he learned construction, masonry, and farming. At the age of 18, he was sent to Brussels, the capital of Belgium, to study, but his classmates made fun of him for being a peasant, and for his common way of speaking and behaving. But with his kindness, he won their sympathy. At the age of 20, he wrote to his parents asking for permission to become a religious in the community of the Sacred Hearts. Many times he knelt before the image of the great missionary, St. Francis Xavier, and said to the saint, "Please obtain for me from God the grace to be a missionary like you." It just so happened that another religious of the community was to go on mission to the Hawaiian Islands, but he became ill, and the superiors asked Damien to take his place. That was what he wanted most. In 1863, he set sail for his distant mission. On the ship, he became good friends with the captain, who told him, "I never go to confession. I'm a bad Catholic. But I tell you that with you, I would go to confession." Shortly after arriving in Honolulu, he was ordained a priest and sent to a small island in Hawaii. Almost all the inhabitants of the island were Protestants. With the help of a few Catholic peasants, he built a chapel, and there he began to celebrate Mass and catechize. He then dedicated himself so lovingly to all the people that the Protestants began to convert to Catholicism. He brought medicine and cured many of the sick, but there were some who were incurable. They were the lepers. Since there were many lepers in the Hawaiian Islands, the neighbors asked the government to ban all leprosy patients to the island of Molokai. This island became a hell of hopeless pain. The poor sick were forgotten there and left without help or aid. Upon hearing this news, Father Damien asked the bishop to allow him to go and live with the lepers of Molokai. The bishop granted him permission, and there he went. In 1873, he arrived on the island of the lepers. Before leaving, he said, "I know that I am going into perpetual exile, and that sooner or later I will catch leprosy. But no sacrifice is too great if it is made for Christ." The lepers received him with immense joy. Father Damien began to create jobs for the lepers to distract them from their illness. Little by little, he transformed the island into a pleasant place to live. The government forbade Father Damien to leave the island and to deal with those who passed by in the boats. Father Damien had not been able to go to confession for years. One day, as a ship carrying supplies for the lepers approached, the holy priest climbed into a boat and came as close as he could to the ship. He then asked the priest who was traveling there to hear his confession. And from the boat, he shouted out loud his last confession. One day he put his foot into a pot that had extremely hot water in it, and he felt nothing. Then he realized that he was leprous. He immediately knelt down before a crucifix and exclaimed, "Lord, for love of you and for the salvation of these children of yours, I accept this terrible reality. This sickness will eat away at my body, but I am happy to think that each day that I become more ill on earth, I will be closer to you in heaven." The sickness was rapidly spreading through his body. The sick people commented, "How beautiful Father Damien was when he came to live with us, and how deformed the disease has made him." But he added, "It doesn't matter if the body becomes deformed and ugly, if the soul becomes beautiful and pleasing to God." Shortly before he died, a ship arrived in Molokai with the captain who years before had told him that the only priest he would confess to was him. And so he did. On April 15, 1889, the Apostle of the Lepers flew to heaven to receive the reward so well deserved for his admirable charity. Saint Damien of Molokai, help us to give ourselves to others without thinking of ourselves. Sanctity consists in giving that little bit more. Give that little bit more, and don't let yourself be led by what is easy. See you next time.